welcome to this Holy Week episode of Where Peter Is Live. Coming to you on Wednesday night, Spy Wednesday, with our regular crew. Let's bring everybody in here. We have Mike Lewis, Melinda Ribnek, and for the first time we have contributor Nathan Turowsky joining us.
Hello.
We're gonna start.
Hi. Hello.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hola.
So we're going to start with the prayer because it is Holy Week, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves before we kind of dive into what we're going to talk about today. So let's just, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Help us, Mother of Divine Love, to conform to the will of the Father and to do as we are told by Jesus, who has taken upon himself our sufferings and carried our sorrows, to lead us through the cross to the joy of the resurrection. Amen.
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 And that was from Pope Francis from his extraordinary Urbi et Orbi last year. I pulled that from one of Nathan's pieces that I reread today. You had quoted it last year. I thought it was appropriate.
Something go on.
Oh.
It's actually relevant to this. It says, I like how Nathan professes dislike for new media, but he's arguably an online content creator at this point. No, thanks, Antonio.
We have comments already. Okay, so today we're getting started with Pope Francis's Holy Week plans because they're a little bit different. It's another pandemic Holy Week for us, whole church. I know it's probably different for everyone here. We've had to make mass reservations and all kinds of weird stuff as we look ahead to navigate the liturgies this week. And so on the site, people will notice that our content is different, right? Mike, we have a little bit more of a reflective perspective on Holy Week this week than our usual kind of commentary. We've kind of backed off on that a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. We, it's been, I guess you could say, translations and reflections.
Yeah, that's true. We do have a quite viral post right now. So
so Archbishop or Cardinal Schönborn of Vienna has twice been part of media interviews where obviously in the German-speaking world, the reaction to the CDF documents has been a little hostile in the general culture. So to say the least. And there have been a number, and the funny thing is it's being taken by, Catholic conservative media as him denying the doctrine. And on the left, well, they're taking it as him denying the church's teaching, but one side likes that and one side doesn't. And so no one's actually providing the entire transcript in English. It's only in the German language. So we have some German readers, and an Austrian reader too, who's actually from Vienna and is part of Cardinal Schönborn's archdiocese. So he and Deacon Clayton Nickel, who is actually a local deacon from the Archdiocese of Washington, and he's a German, and he both of them have worked very generously in translating those so that you can kind of have the full context of what Cardinal Schönborn was saying. But beyond that, and more importantly, actually, are the reflections on Holy Week that we have been posting. We started the week with one of our new rotation of, and this was. We still love Father Satish. We're still friends with Father Satish, but Father Satish actually said maybe it would be a good idea to bring in some other voices. I guess the thing is, if you're going to the same church every Sunday and hearing the same priest preach every Sunday, you don't get that variety of perspectives. So he will be taking 1 week, and we have the other slots filled now. So this upcoming Easter Sunday will be Angela Rasmussen, the wife of Adam Rasmussen. She has a PhD in biblical studies. We thought that having a woman's voice would definitely enhance our site. So she is going to do the first weekend of the month. And then Father Mike Najim of the Diocese of Providence, Rhode Island, will be the second. And then Father Satish will be the third. And then Father Alex Roche, who wrote this past Sunday, who wrote our Palm Sunday reflection, will be the fourth Sunday of the week. So, if you wanna catch up with Father Satish every week, he still has his own website, and it's linked in any of the things that he's written. So feel free to, continue to follow him.
Yeah,
there.
I know one of the kind of benefits of the pandemic is people have been exposed to a lot of different preaching, and I think we've kind of brought that to the site. But people can stream, Mass from wherever and hear a homily from all over the world over the past year. So we're kind of expanding that into a permanent feature.
The funny thing was, it was just sort of, I met Father Satish and we kind of exchanged. I think I'd listened to one of his homily podcasts or something and just wrote to him and said, I thought it was really nice. And, by the way, I run this site Where Peter Is, and if you're ever interested in contributing. And then next thing I know, he starts sending his Sunday homilies. And then I start hearing from people who, like youth groups are using them, parish groups are using them. People are relying on these reflections for their, so it was like a service that we provided. And we're more than happy to host it. So here we go. We're branching out. We're expanding.
On that note, an online acquaintance of mine who lives in La Spezia, Italy, told me recently that he's recommended Where Peter Is to several of his friends and to his parish priest, who I guess reads English.
Getting that global boost.
Yeah. I've had stuff recommended by I think the Pandora's Box of Catholic Anti-Semitism is recommended by one of the official Jesuit magazines in the Philippines, possibly.
Oh wow!
Somewhere around there. Yeah, we definitely have a reach. Plus, there's occasional hits we get from Vatican City where we speculate what cardinal is reading what posts.
I think it was one of my pieces and one of Rachel's that we were getting some odd hits, and it was somebody. They didn't ask permission, but hey, who cares? It's not like we're selling the content anyway. Had translated our pieces into Vietnamese.
Oh yeah, I remember that was.
So we've had Hungarian, Vietnamese, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Malayalam. Yeah. So people appreciate our work from
little name dropping here, telling us how great we are here to begin our Holy Week. Just want to let you guys know we're in
we're pretty great.
So hit the subscribe button and happy Holy Week.
I got an autograph from Jason.
That's right.
That was not the direction we intended to take this conversation.
But here we are.
But we were also going to talk about our reflections that we have on the site written by our regular contributors this week. So Matt Capita Connell has one posted today that is about unity during this Holy Week, and Melinda's was posted. Was that yesterday? It was about. I think it went up yesterday.
Yeah, it went up yesterday.
It was submitted yesterday. Went up yesterday.
We're in a time warp right now.
Guys, I'm going to submit an article Monday, Tuesday. Oh, here we are.
We are a well-oiled machine. But Melinda wrote about Pope Francis's Palm Sunday homily, which focused on an interesting theme. It was about being filled with amazement heading into Holy Week. And do you want to talk, just kind of recap for people who might not have gotten to read it yet?
It's just, I definitely see God's providence at work, because I was at Palm Sunday Mass, and typically I'm not, this whole year of, like I talk about in the article, seeing so many divisions and some of the ugliness within the church surface has been very scandalous in the real definition of the word. It's been hard to keep the faith with strength when you see that those representing the church, and the problems in the church are so great and they affect so many people. So it's just been very hard. I know I used the analogy in the article, but I have this image that I've constantly played in my head where it feels like, the parable where the woman's like hanging on to the cloak of Jesus. Well, I swear it feels sometimes like you're hanging on to the last little thread.
The little thread of the tassel, right?
Right. And mind you, it's the cloak of Jesus. So that thread is strong, but it's still what it is. And so, I'm sure like so many people, in one way, we're grateful to be able to go to Mass because the parish in the next town over takes really good precautions. And so Mass has been opened up again in the last couple of months, and we feel very safe about it. And so we've been able to go, but in another, it's just been kind of, hard to have those like spiritual consolations when you see kind of some of the stuff in the church. So out of nowhere, I'm sure I was even yelling at my kids on the way, who knows, out of nowhere, I get to Palm Sunday. It's not even in my mind to have this like super fantastic Holy Week. And I'm getting the palms and they're singing like Hosanna in the highest. And all the Holy Weeks in the past just like come flooding. And I just remember like in a spiritual kind of surreal almost way that like this is what it's all about. Like this is the heart. This is about the real man who rode on the donkey and the people who were praising him. And then later that week, those of us, right, the people who would also crucify him, and we would sit, with him and all those things. And so it's just the Triduum has just played such an instrumental role in my spiritual life throughout. And so just to have some of that like rawness and that realness that I know that I've seen of the faith come rushing back was unexpected. And that it came in a very complicated time where we're trying to dissect and discern these problems in the church, from sex abuse scandals to racism, even to what I've seen this year, a much needed better approach to our LGBTQ Catholics, right? So many problems. And so to see that, to feel that still amazement that I wasn't expecting was really, it was something to kind of remind me the liturgy matters. This week matters. And this week and this liturgy comes from this church that at the heart of it is so good and so holy, right? Maybe not always the people, but the church, the liturgy, the worship, the God who we worship. All of that is real. And so when I came home and then basically the next day wanted to, see what Pope Francis was saying on Palm Sunday, and I looked it up and the amazement like hit me like a 2x4, because I was like, dude, this guy is like saying in much better, like nicer language, these things that like I had in my heart that like I wasn't able, maybe to even identify or articulate at the time. And he talks about the amazement of particularly the liturgy, right? So that was the first thing. And I was like, ding, 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 I'm supposed to read this. So I kept reading. And the amazement he talks about comes from when we don't just admire Jesus from afar, right? We can admire Jesus as like, a nice guy, But the amazement comes when we really let him challenge us in real ways and to become new. And that's what a lot of this year has been for me, is challenging the things that my perspective on so much in ways that, yes, have cost. And so the article's up. Pope Francis's homily is better than the article, but that's linked to in the article. I know Mike's side-eyeing me. You did a great job editing, Mike, but the Pope is still better. So, but however, so that's what I was experieing, and just wanted to kind of get that message out.
It's always great to realize. Oh, someone has to go.
There's
oh my goodness.
Sticker, I mean, God is my co-pilot is the famous one, but there's also like, my boss is a Jewish carpenter and stuff like that. I'm picturing Melinda with one that says like, the Pope is my editor-in-chief.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I like that. But I'm not sure that would leave Mike without a job if the Pope was my editor. What would you do with all your time, Mike?
Is it me who's making that echo? No. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Let me try meeting myself. It's just
no, it was me, I think, and then it went away. I think I had a bad connection for a second.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
What were
we talking about? I thought I was the editor.
I was just going to say that it's always really exciting.
Like big publishing concerns. There's the editor, and then the executive editor, and so forth. You know, what Radfrat's call the great chain of being, except for
editorially
online Catholic opinion websites.
Well, and Matt Capodiconal is our.
It's Capodiconal. I could be wrong.
His name
is Matt. LOL.
He is our. Sorry. That was an inside joke, everyone, that would take 3 hours to explain.
Sorry, I relished this moment, really. Okay, go ahead.
I gave him the title of staff apologist because I thought every, or Catholic organization needs one of those. So, but it's in scare quotes. It's not. He's staff apologist.
Scare quotes. We don't believe in the apologetics movement on this. No. Okay.
Yeah, I do apologetics all the time.
I know. I'm being silly. Okay. What were you going to say, Mike?
I was going to say, hi, Jeannie. Look.
Oh, is Jeannie Gaffigan in the comments?
Look, there's Jeannie. Hi.
Hey,
Shout
Jeannie.
out.
Hi, Jeannie.
Okay.
Hello.
You comment, Jeannie.
Yeah, the worst moment.
What are we talking
Melinda,
about?
it sounded like what did
Yeah.
really well with what you had experienced and like put words to an experience that you had, which is always like a really big grace to me, especially, I know we were talking about this before as moms who are like, the week before a holiday, we are like making stuff happen, like making sure everyone has clothes for those cute Easter photos and making sure everyone has goodies for their basket. And we're not really in the frame of mind necessarily to really enter into the Triduum. So when God kind of like just pings you on the shoulder or just pulls you over with tears. Yeah.
Yeah. Like before all the kids, when I actually had time to pray during Holy Week. No. But yeah, no, it was good. Yeah, for sure. It was good to be able to kind of, I think as moms, especially we can't rely on like spiritual consolations all the time because there's people say, well, don't worry about all that stuff. Just worry about the spiritual side. And then you're like, yeah, but then there's no Easter dinner. There's no candy. The kids are naked for church. Like what? Like so it's just this constant battle. Gosh, I'm not being prayerful enough during Holy Week. And oh, wait, then my kids, they don't get their Easter candy. And so, I mean, not that it's all about the candy, but the candy does help. So
candy is important.
Yes. And the eggs. Oh my gosh, who's going to die? The eggs. So, and people are like, those things don't matter. And I'm like, actually they do a little bit, like it does matter. So
they do matter for children, like drawing other people into being able to experience Holy Week, like requires that we try to think about what will actually speak to my child and not just thinking, okay, I'm going to make these liturgical plans for all these activities we're going to do. And but I'm going to spark like Easter joy for them and really in sort of memorable ways. And for the Easter vigil, like at home with our kids and like things like that, just make an impression, kind of that sense of amazement, pulling me over when I'm at Mass or having to kind of provide an opportunity for adult and training.
I don't even have to type the names in.
We do have a bunny. So this year, we will do an Easter picture with a bunny. Sorry, I had to get that out. This year, I
did Easter bunny.
My dad's best guess about the letter is Michael appreciate this. I'm not sure if anyone else will. Is that my friend lives in a wormhole to the Gamma Quadrant, and it just gets thrown through time and space and sent back to.
When we start our Catholic nerd podcast, that'll be a good anecdote to share during
Catholic
that one.
Nerd podcast. We'll have a separate Catholic nerd stream. Okay.
We will. Adam Rasmussen and David Lafferty and you and I. We can talk about
nerd podcasts already.
So
kind of saturated market at this point, I think.
Anyway, go ahead, Rachel.
So all of our Easter or our Holy Weeks are going to be different this year, and Pope Francis's schedule is also going to be different than his usual. He's going to have the Chrism Mass tomorrow with representatives of the priests of Rome, rather than having like all several hundred of the priests, cardinals, and bishops who reside in Rome at St. Peter's. I know, Mike, you have commented that, like, in the past, Pope Francis's Holy Thursday homilies directed at priests have been pretty, like, pointed about priesthood. Do you have any insights about what we might hear?
Yeah, just a few things. Like, I was just sort of talking about the various things that in one of our planning meetings, we were discussing the different things maybe to expect from Rome during Holy Week. And I think I wrote a piece a year or two ago about how a lot of people, Pope Francis has this reputation where they say, oh, he says insulting things about priests who wear cassocks, or, you know, he calls them little monsters, and really what it is like, he's saying to priests, you don't want to be a little monster, but it gets twisted into Pope Francis calls all priests monsters. But if you actually, where you most see Pope Francis's thoughts on the priesthood have traditionally been his the Chrism Mass, which is the Mass. It's every diocese has one. Traditionally, it's held on Holy Thursday, but it can be earlier in the week because, you know, bigger dioceses and priests need to get back to their parishes on Thursday. But it's when the bishop of the diocese blesses the sacred oils that will be used in the parishes for the sacraments for the rest of the year. So he's always had some very profound messages just about, you know, the priest as a servant, his appreciation for priests, for the work they do, for the things that they do that don't get noticed. I mean, I think that's the thing. I think he doesn't like these signs of grandiosity that priests, that some priests, celebrity priests or loudmouth priests or you know, priests who are regularly praised for or given endorsements or given platforms. He has a real appreciation for those. I mean, or the ones who really truly know their people and who accompany their people. And I mean, it's funny because I really do look forward to every Holy Week with Pope Francis. I was just talking about how you know, one Palm Sunday in 2014, he tossed aside his homily, his prepared remarks, and gave an Ignatian reflection on you know, who are you to the Lord? And he walked through all the characters, you know, all the people who appear in the Passion narrative. And it's like, were you the centurion? Were you Pilate? Were you the guards? Were you Simon of Cyrene? Like, where do you place yourself in that story? And I mean, you know, reading it slowly and reflecting on it was very meaningful. There's also his Holy Thursday Mass, the Lord's Supper, where he traditionally has gone off-site. It was a really big break in precedent when he did that. The very first Easter, or the very first Triduum as Pope, he went to a youth prison and washed the feet of 12 prisoners, including, I think, 2 women and 2 Muslims, or 4 women and 2 Muslims, including non-Catholics, and that caused quite a stir. Last year, his Easter Vigil homily, which was about a church that actually shows compassion, and a church where Catholics are, you know, he said, imagine a church, how beautiful it is to be Christians who offer consolation, who bear the burdens of others, and who offer encouragement, messengers of life in a time of death. And that piece moved me to write that night. Just sort of like, why aren't we encouraging to one another? Why do we feel the need to tear down other Christians? Anyway, so I'm just looking forward to what he has to say during the Triduum. It's always exciting when the Holy the Good Friday stations are always written by, I think this year it's being written by children.
Yeah.
Last year it was
teenagers. Yeah.
Last year it was written by prisoners. He's had a married couple write it. He's had doctors, I think, one year. So it's always you know, he wants to bring in different perspectives, and so I mean, that's, I guess, one of the perks of the of the pandemic is not the perks, but I mean, if you are locked down, or if you are, or if you are homebound, then go to Vatican News and follow the events there. Exactly.
And I know today that he had his regular Wednesday audience, and he gave a short catechesis on the Triduum. He went through kind of each day with a little short lesson about each day of the Triduum. So Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and then he spoke about the Easter Vigil. And he raised some really interesting points. I know, Melinda, you were saying that what struck you was he talked about money and the evil of money.
He talked about it was just a point I had never even considered. He talked about the guards who had seen the tomb empty and who had seen Jesus, risen from the dead, and the fact that like they still carried on their work. It didn't move them. And that again goes back to the amazement issue. Like, they weren't open to being amazed. And he pinpoints the reason to being money. The fact that they were paid to be doing this job, and that you could only have one God, right? The scripture that talks about only one God, and instead of two gods, money and God, right? And so it was just something that I hadn't considered. And I think, again, the last year or two has just been eye-opening for kind of breaking out of the bubble maybe that I would like to live in, and seeing that so much of the destruction in the world, and even by those who are even Christian, a lot of it is motivated, by money and power and those types of things. So just to see like, again, I guess he's good at, pointing to those characters in the story and what they have to teach us. And just, meditating on the fact that someone could have seen the risen Lord. Like, we assume that if you saw the risen Lord, you would be like moved. But are there other things in your life that cause you not to be close to that amazement? His enemies saw him, and
that's
then
a quote from the audio.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought it was a pretty sharp thing to say, right? It just was a very clear point to make, and I was kind of, taken aback by it. And I think if we're going to apply it to our lives, it's this idea of what stops us from being amazed at the risen Lord. Like, what stops us from, converting our hearts. So.
Well, the God and money thing has kind of been on my mind a lot in the past few years because of my work situation. I wrote about this a little over a year ago as part of my Loneliness Today series for Where Peter Is. I wrote this piece about unemployment and underemployment among young people and my, at the time, very tenuous work situation. I was like a super part-time substitute teacher. I was actually getting paid more to translate Japanese Tolkien fan comics than I was to substitute teach. And so that's kind of ever since then, this idea that this life I'm leading isn't really a money generating life has been kind of weighing on me. And I think we live in a society that even among like supposedly anti-materialistic or anti-consumerist or even anti-capitalist people, there's still this this focus on the material, this focus on money. This isn't an original observation, of course, but what helped me with that was some of the early another Francis, Saint Francis, some of the early Franciscan writings. There's this one called, I think it's called something like The Spiritual Marriage of Saint Francis and Lady Poverty, that just has this like, Lady Poverty, the allegorical character, just goes in this tirade at a bunch of friars, which just goes, do not be motivated by accumulating wealth, do not get involved in the business world, do not, lead your life basically in a way that's oriented towards what I guess our parents or grandparents' generation called the rat race. And yeah, I think just connecting that to Pope Francis's observation in this audience today, I think there's a definite through line of what we might call Franciscan teaching on poverty and wealth that I found very helpful in my own life, even now that my work situation is somewhat better than it was a year and a half ago.
Was that Dante, Nathan?
It wasn't Dante, no. It's an anonymous friar who I believe was a contemporary of Dante. It does sound a little like...
yeah, the Lady Poverty thing just reminds me of Dante.
Well, and Francis himself wrote about Lady Poverty. So, because in the Paradiso, at the end when he sees the Empyrean, he sees Saint Francis like locked in an embrace with Lady Poverty and rose-shaped auditorium of saints surrounding the Trinity.
Yeah, and Pope Francis just issued an apostolic letter about Dante.
Mm-hmm. So which Melinda also wrote about last week.
Oh my God! Which I wrote about.
I've read like the greatest hits of it. I still need to sit down and go through the whole thing.
It's beautiful in the sense that Dante's life was, he was ostracized. He was literally exiled from this community. And then, and that was very wounding to him. And from that woundedness, he was able to write about things that transcended his own experience, to relate to a variety of things like hypocrisy, ostracization, like all of these things created these writings that still are relevant today, in different ways. But yeah, it was funny because when I wrote that piece, Rachel, I was like, okay, Rachel and I were joking because it's like, okay, the Pope has written about Dante. Now, Pope Francis is like my man because he is like so practical, right? And it's all about like how you apply things to daily living. So I was like, okay. Now in this, at the end of the letter, he does call on people to review Dante's work, right? And I don't have that much. I have some familiarity with Dante, but I was like, okay, how can we apply this to like our lives? And then that's when it hit me too, this whole like, how Dante was able to kind of grow from the sufferings and the experiences that, that could be emulated by us as well.
The common thread is poverty and in the Christian life and lived in different ways. So the material poverty and then the poverty of being excluded and exiled even. And so I think that's what we come back to in even the audience today, where he makes us realize that we need to free ourselves from these attachments to money and realize like there are ways in which we are being paid to deny the resurrection of Jesus. And we need to be attentive to that and the grasp that money can have on us if we aren't poor and experiencing that poverty. Nathan, you're going to add something about Pope Benedict, which it
was about the Dante thing. Benedict the 15th, the World War I era Pope Benedict, wrote 100 years ago, like almost to the day, an apostolic letter on the 600th anniversary of Dante's death. And I haven't read that one in full either, but I think I would kind of like to read that one alongside Pope Francis's 100 years later and see if there's common threads in the papal theology of Dante or the theology of the Divine Comedy over the past 100 years.
So another topic we were planning on discussing today kind of ties into this poverty of not just material poverty, but poverty of spirit and poverty in our lives and like limitation that we experience and the vulnerability of sharing about our own limitations and our own experiences with others. And I think all of us, Nathan, you were talking about your loneliness series last year and your post about underemployment. And I know that all four of us here have written about our own kind of experiences of just really vulnerably. Like Melinda has posted about her experience of being a victim of assault, and I wrote about an experience of grief. And Mike most recently has, written about his experience with glaucoma and upcoming procedure for that. So I think that this is something that is kind of all on our minds as we move into this Holy Week. And something I was thinking about as we were getting ready for this stream was that how Pope Francis's own, like, Pope Francis is what brought together basically where Peter is. And the site is not only a place where we kind of share what he talks about and what he teaches the church, but where we also begin to share how that has informed our own spiritual lives, our own experiences. And I think that's something that's really beautiful about what can happen when you do kind of open yourself to the Pope's teaching and to the way he has of teaching us, that you can be led to kind of share openly, because that's where we can really have that solidarity that he reminds us to have. So, Mike, do you want to share, maybe not everyone has read your recent post, A Blind Eye, about what you're going through, but do you want to kind of...
So it was something like, I didn't really know whether I should write about it or if it was worth writing about it. And then I kind of just hammered out maybe a little bit of a stream of consciousness about the last several months of my life. Basically what happened was, about 7 or 8 months ago, I started to notice a little spot in my left eye. And at first I thought, I kind of chalked it up to, was it dry eye? Was it, when I would, I wear contact lenses. So at night when I put on my glasses, I have a very old pair of glasses and they're kind of scuffed up. And I'm like, I would keep saying, oh, I need to get new ones. There's like they're scuffed up on this side. Like, it was just this very faint little blind spot. And then, started to realize after, a couple of incidents, my night vision started going. I tripped over a pile of bricks that was like right in my path. And I just didn't I did not see that it was there. It was a really, it was really kind of freaky. And, so I decided, okay, well, it had been a while since I had made an eye doctor's appointment, and, I feel bad because they say you're supposed to go every year, and it had been 6, 7, 8 years since and I had just sort of been reordering my contact lenses off an old prescription year after year after year. And I didn't, I just kept thinking I'd moved. So it was sort of like, I'd need to find a new eye doctor. And anyway, it just finally go to the eye doctor and check my eyes. And they're like, your eye pressure is over 40. Supposed to be under 20. These numbers don't necessarily mean anything to anybody. And then I did a field vision test, and it was basically like, you have significant vision loss in your left eye, and your optic nerve in your right eye looks just as bad. And this looks pretty bad. But we'll have you see the specialist and see what's going on. And so 3 months later, which sort of brought us to last Thursday or two Thursdays ago, in the specialist's office, and he's doing all kinds of tests. And basically, he tells me, you have a very serious case of glaucoma. And it's totally, I don't fit into any of the categories. I'm risk factors. I don't have thin corneas. I'm under 65. I'm not African American. I don't have sickle cell anemia. I don't have heart disease. I don't have any of the risk factors. I don't have a family history of it. And he's like, I have had patients younger than you before, but you're currently my youngest, and it's just sort of like, why me? Why now? Why this?
All the things we ask ourselves when bad things happen
exactly.
to us, because we think we're good people and it shouldn't be this way.
So I guess the thing is, one of the weird things though so anyway, I'm having a procedure done on Thursday. I'm for all intents and purposes blind, like legally blind in my left eye. I can still see colors and light, but but basically what this surgery is, drops aren't doing a good enough job of bringing down my eye pressure. So the surgery is supposed to basically help help my eyes, regulate the pressure better, the drain better. And so I kind of asked him, I was like, well, what are we looking at? What's the prognosis? What are we talking about? And he basically said, well, assuming you respond to treatment, I can fairly confidently say that we can keep the vision loss to a minimum for maybe 10 or 15 years. And then, but they're always new, they're coming up with new research, new treatments all the time. And there's all this exciting new research, but it's sort of like, okay, well, that'll bring me to my early 50s, early to mid 50s. It's like, I don't need to see after 50, right? Like, I mean, what else is there by then you've seen it all. I don't know. No, but then the other thing is, though, it's like I write a piece, and this is kind of the thing when you write something where you're vulnerable, and maybe this is something that the rest of you, maybe if it's the feedback, first of all, overwhelmed by the feedback, overwhelmed by the kind words and the prayers, and priests saying that they'll pray for me at Mass. A couple of families said they would pray rosary for me.
Didn't even Raymond Arroyo extend like a name?
Yeah.
He did.
I said thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know. He wouldn't write out my name in full, but I'm not even gonna. Yeah. I don't want to go there.
Nope.
Anyway,
sorry.
I guess it's better than what he could have. Yeah. No, it's fine.
Okay. We can move on.
Yeah.
Let's not bring that. Let's pretend we didn't bring that.
It is really, it is really tough when you're in those situations where you're vulnerable, like to receive the love and care of other people. Like that can feel really uncomfortable.
They are the hardest responses. Like I'm more comfortable with trolls than like people saying kind things. I don't know.
Well, it's like it is hard. Like I feel like now if I don't go blind, I'll let everybody down, or something. I mean, because it's a possibility. Like basically what he said, like if you don't get treatment, within 6 or 7 years, you won't be able to see. But because there is treatment now and there are ways to slow the progression of it, it's, I don't know, but it also sort of felt, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a way to evangelize. I think that people need to see the humanity behind people. I'm more than just a Twitter account. I'm more than just a guy, a goofball who makes, Muppet faces. And, yeah, I've just got tap water in a.
Oh, in a only water today. No
32 ounces
red
of tap
energy
water.
drink.
No red. I meant to look and see if there was blue energy drink, but I didn't get around to it. But maybe next week I'll be drinking. Well, next time I'll be drinking blue.
I feel like I was feeling it too, and then I'm looking around. I'm like, I don't have my coffee this week. Like, is this like a Holy Week thing we're doing, where we're like, we'll come in here and like just be crazy and messy and not like super hyped?
Yeah.
No,
it's real.
But then, the thing is, it's like other times you'll run into things where people, like when I wrote about my mom and losing my mom and some of the difficulty in that relationship, I got a lot of, people who were really moved by it. A lot of people, the reason why I opted to write that was because people were, because I knew that I wanted to give voice to people who were in that situation, and not many people were, who had loved ones who had fallen into this, anti-Francis mindset, the Vigano, Taylor Marshall world.
And at the time that you wrote it, it wasn't. This was still when a lot of the more mainstream, like pro-Francis Catholic outlets were saying, "Oh, it's a loud minority."
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, my original pitch to America Magazine was a response to a Jim Keen article when President Trump tweeted out Vigano's open letter to him, and Jim Keen basically said, "Pay it no mind, don't pay attention to it." And I'm just thinking, like, okay, if you're somebody who works in Manhattan and hangs out with Jesuits, and I don't mean to say this in like the worst possible way. But it's like, you don't know, you can't speak to what's happening in suburban Catholic America.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is widespread. Like, since I've started Where Peter Is, I don't know. I mean, those of you, anyway.
Yeah.
And then like within like 3 or 4 months after that, there was the whole, I mean, this wasn't specifically Catholic, but there was the whole like how I lost this or that loved one to QAnon genre of,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt to me when those started popping up almost like Mike's America piece about his mother was almost a spiritual forerunner to that.
And we lost Melinda.
No.
I don't know if that was intentional. If she comes back, we'll add her back. Yeah, I think one of the things that happens when people kind of share about, the loss of your mom and the way that affected you, or even share about your physical limitation, is there's a lot of an impulse to either like deny that, like, okay, so there's the good level of where people are expressing a lot of care and concern and love that can make us feel uncomfortable. But then there's also like denial and like blaming of you for ruining your own relationship, or coming in and trying to fix things for you. So like here, I don't know if you've gotten on the receiving end of like recommendations for how to heal your glaucoma, as if your doctor hadn't, reviewed thoroughly all the possibilities for you. But we have these impulses in us when someone shares vulnerably, like, okay, this is making me uncomfortable too, so I'm gonna like just try to fix it for all of us.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's funny because like, I know when my dad had cancer, we got so many emails of how you can cure his stage 4 renal cell carcinoma with baking soda and lemon juice.
Sure.
It's like
that detox would fix it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's definitely people. It's almost like, well, it's sort of like if you're the person in mourning at a wake, for example, you're the person who's sort of on stage. Like, you've got to greet all the people, you've got to thank them and give them, and when really all you want to do sometimes is pull the covers over your head. And anyway, but I think that Pope Francis has been very honest about his humanity, and like Nathan has written before about how it's just sort of like when Pope Francis, I remember, and not to like John Paul II, it was always like, oh, he's in great health, he's doing well. Like, they covered up his Parkinson's disease, even though he clearly had it for he was
clearly deteriorating
for years, and then like he couldn't speak for the last like week or for the last few months of his life. But then they were like, yes, and his last words right before he died were, "I will now go to the house of my father." And I'm like, did they? I mean, maybe he did, but I mean, it just seemed like to me they wouldn't ever say, even though it was clear to everybody else that he was deteriorating. Whereas Pope Francis, he's got bad sciatica, so he's going to be out for a week.
Yeah, he overshares about it in plain interviews.
Yeah.
Very,
I know you've written about that, haven't you, Nathan?
Yeah, when Shinzo Abe, the immediate past prime minister of Japan, resigned because of I believe colitis, some other like very painful chronic health condition. I wrote a piece that ended up with the title "What We Can Learn from Chronically Ill Leaders," and it was basically about that. It was about the Abe's kind of recognition of his humanity and his vulnerability and stepping down, and Francis's recognition of the same with his sciatica, and John Paul II, of course, eventually just saying, they said, he has Parkinson's, he's on his way out. Basically just the idea that these very, by any standard, very successful, powerful, influential people were just, having to admit that their bodies weren't cooperating, their minds in some cases weren't either. They just had these these frailties, these vulnerabilities that
just very human.
I think that's one of the things that the modern communication age has made sort of inevitable. Like Franklin Roosevelt, they hid the fact that the president of the United States was in a wheelchair.
Well, I mean, people with FDR knew that. I mean, they knew in the abstract, like, oh, the president has difficulty walking unassisted, but they didn't see it. They didn't see, like, the Secret Service carrying him up the steps of the Capitol like a sack of potatoes at his inauguration. Because there's knowing in the abstract, oh yeah, FDR's not in great health, and then there's the vulnerability, really.
Didn't Pope Francis also talk about how he received like counseling at one point early on, like years ago?
Yeah,
like, that was remarkable.
He has an appreciation for psychological support. That he's expressed multiple times. I believe he received like the care of a counselor, like when he was kind of exiled completely, but when he was kind of on the outs with the Jesuits in Argentina, I think after he was kind of demoted, he went through the court of I believe that's when that happened. But even with like contemporary media, there is a sense in which, like, I mean, I didn't realize how much Francis's sciatica affected him until my husband and I, a few years ago, it was 2018, we actually went on a pilgrimage to Rome for Holy Week, and we were in St. Peter's for the major liturgies, and he's just like shuffling down the aisle. And as the week went on, he got even, slower and more tired looking. But I know that I believe it's Good Friday during the Passion of the Lord service. There's prostrations of the celebrant in front of the crucifix, like the congregation kneels and then the priest prostrates himself. And Pope Francis does that. And he's like down on the ground and then requiring help to get back up. But then I could tell watching the video replays that like the video kind of zoom out as he was struggling to get back up to sort of still conceal like the difficulty he was having. But it's just really apparent to me being there how difficult it was for him and how painful it was for him to actually just engage in this ministry. And we saw it too when he went to Iraq last month. How kind of slow he was in some places, and how much it seemed to be bothering him. So
and he even said he enjoyed the traveling, but and getting back out on the road. But he's like, I feel a lot more tired than I did 2 years ago, like the last time he went somewhere.
Japan and Thailand,
and he actually, I don't think he wasn't the first pope that was open about that vulnerability, because Benedict, who was so close to John Paul II. And maybe was a little bit critical of what was how John Paul was being treated, or how he was being presented in this sort of dishonest way about. I don't know if that's the right word, but the PR around him was that everything was fine, or that he's totally alert or whatever. Whereas Benedict, remember he got that moving platform that he would ride to go up the aisle of St. Peter's during liturgies. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
He was like, put a conveyor belt in there. I'm not doing it no more. I am not playing with you.
It's a long aisle. I do not blame him. They should maybe bring that up.
Oh, it's huge. It's so much bigger than even the other great churches of Italy, that when I was in Rome, I kept thinking the Via della Conciliazione was shorter than it was, because I was comparing it to the size of the church at the end of it, and I was underestimating the scale of it.
And I mean, I think, and so Benedict, obviously he resigned for reasons of tiredness, and the amazing thing is he's been an ex-pope longer than he was pope. But here's the thing, and this is what I think he appreciated, that maybe the Vatican is always a little bit farther behind than the rest of us, or than the rest of society when it comes to making these adjustments. Vatican radio finally turned on in 1930 or something. 30 years after radio was mainstream. Or
Pius IX resisted railroads and
and I think but the nature of modern leadership is such that people today, because of television, because of radio, and now because of social media and the internet, we expect to hear from our leaders. We expect to see our leaders. We expect our leaders to, and I mean, I don't know if it's, I mean, I think in a lot of ways it's a good thing because we see the humanity, or we can see the humanity of our leaders. It's funny though, because he, you know, I think he appreciated, like, I'm too tired to continue doing this job. I'm getting too old to do what a pope needs to do
to meet the demands of the church, right?
of the church today. And the fact of the matter is, and this is part of one of the things that we try to teach and stress at Where Peter is that obviously every pope has different gifts, and every pope has different talents and does certain things better than others. But no matter who the pope is, the Holy Spirit is still guiding and protecting the church. It's still Christ's church. The pope is still the successor of Peter. The pope is still the vicar of Christ. So if the pope steps down, God gives the church what we need. And I think ultimately, you know, I was very, when Benedict resigned, but when Francis was elected, I was very hopeful. And I think we accept the circumstances that we're in now. You know, I've heard various commentators lament the day that Pope Benedict stepped down because of the horrible Bergoglio who took over. But I think in reality, you know, it was a good thing, even though, I mean, Pope Francis is getting older too. And I know he's open to the idea of resignation. It's a good question about whether or not he plans to do it. He said that he plans to die in Rome. Now, I don't know if he means by that he plans to die as Pope, or if he plans to, you know, take over Benedict's old apartment.
He said something like, "I will die in Rome as Pontiff or Emeritus," which.
Okay. Yeah. So I think he appreciates that too. I think he's going to go at it and continue to be Pope, you know, as long as he can. But if he feels that he can't continue, and if he can't continue to do it effectively, you know, if he can't get by with more than a week off here and there, I wouldn't be surprised if he did step down.
We know as a Jesuit, he's always discerning. So
now they're going to anybody who hears it now, Mike, is going to be quoting you all over Twitter. Mike Lewis says the Pope is going to resign.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think it would increase our web traffic. So.
Right. That's not what Mike is saying. That's not at all what Mike is saying.
I have absolutely no inside information whatsoever.
No idea.
I have no idea.
Inside the Vatican is not Lewis.
I think it's a big leap to make, and so I really don't want us to like make that leap, because it's just so everybody wants to take everything about this Pope and like, you know, twist it and blow it up. But I will say that the point here is that Pope Francis is honest about his vulnerabilities, right?
And his limitations, right?
His limitations in ways that I don't think have been as much in the past. And one thing that I'm questioning as I'm listening to this is some of this come from maybe this like Catholic spirituality of us not like of somehow losing merit from your struggles the more that it's talked about or shown to others. Because I think for me personally, I remember a couple of years ago making a very conscious decision to allow myself to be vulnerable and honest about things that I like to keep to myself, because it's my spirituality and my, you know, whatever. And I was not raised, but I like was formed spiritually initially in this kind of study of the mystics, and this kind of idea that, you know, to suffer in silence was noble or whatever. And so I wonder if some of this kind of plays into this idea, you know, this kind of Catholic spirituality where we're supposed to take on sufferings and like, I don't know. I wonder if that.
Are you talking about like offering it up?
Yes,
like that mentality.
Yes, without the yes.
I think it's also American though too. Like,
yes.
Because the thing is, like, imagine like if a president got up there and said, I'm facing a really tough decision and I need to kind of discern what the best way to go is and whether or not, I mean, he'd get slaughtered by talk radio.
Because I think the West values a very like individual merit achievement based like system, right? Where like, again, you shouldn't rely on the community. You must be at all times. Any dependence is seen as a bad thing. Weakness is seen as a bad thing. And it's highly individualistic. That's kind of some of the cultural makeup of the West. So
and that's not actually the Catholic view of.
But I wonder, no, it's not at all.
Right, it's not part of that, and I think that should be obvious, like especially during Holy Week, because I think so often we get it backwards, where like Jesus entered into our suffering to share it with us, not to like give us a burden. And now it's our job to go and just suffer kind of without sharing it with anyone. No, God came and decided he was going to share in our suffering. And that's what we can reflect on during Holy Week. And that also plays a part in how we understand leadership in the church. Like God decided that he was going to empty himself, take the form of a slave, and become man as Jesus Christ. And then Jesus established this church. And so he trusts this incarnate church, which is human, which is limited, which is finite, to carry on his work in the world. And I think sometimes we do have those expectations like, well, we shouldn't be limited. We should be able to do things, that God told us to do without any limitations and without any problems. But that's not actually the reality of what the church is. And
I met one of my best friends when I made a post on some website pointing out that when Christ is resurrected, it doesn't get rid of the wounds in his hands or his side. He's resurrected. He's not healed.
Right. And there's a lot for us to all kind of ponder and reflect on that this week as we enter into the Triduum tomorrow. We will be having some more reflections on the site all through the next few days. We might have some just quick posts highlighting some of Pope Francis's preaching and just some perspectives on that. And then you can expect kind of a return to our regularly scheduled commentary and excitement next week.
Right. And Rachel will be managing the
send all your complaints to me. Yeah. Don't bother Mike Lewis. So if everyone would keep Mike in your prayers next week for the success of this eye procedure, that would be much appreciated. And do you want to do the boilerplate about if you like us, subscribe?
Yeah. So
our Patreon, all that stuff.
If you want to support the work of Where Peter Is and keep the live streams going and the articles and the podcasts and the study guides and help build up this it's work that we're doing, if you believe in what we're doing, you can become a Patreon sponsor by clicking on the link at the bottom of every post, I think, and on the left hand or right hand column of Where Peter Is. And we appreciate you guys very much. And that's right, I need to post Melinda's rough draft of her Taylor Marshall article up for our Patreon sponsors, like I promised last week. And
you will lose so many Patreons.
Back to your regularly scheduled dunking on Taylor Marshall.
Yeah, we will be back to that.
Oh God, no! Please not.
We're trying to go in a more positive direction.
I know.
Anyway,
and next week, Mike may or may not be with us. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But we'll be back next Thursday with the next episode. We might have to have the women just take over, Melinda. We'll see.
I'm about it.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a blessed Holy Week and Easter, and we will see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.